Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajmain. Amma ba'd. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, all praise and thanks be to Allah, the Lords of the world. And may peace and blessing of Allah be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, his family, and his companion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nana Firman. I'm the Senior Ambassador at Green Faith, which is an interfaith coalition for environment and climate actions. Before I begin, I would like to thank and appreciate the Islamic Society of North America for giving me the opportunity to share my passion and experience working in the environment and climate actions during this blessed Friday. As human society today, we have used our natural resources on this earth more than the nature can regenerate themselves. We are currently consuming more than 1.5 Earth resources globally at the rate we run our lives today. The Global Footprint Network began to calculate a few years back on what it's called the Earth Offshoot Day. What is that? It's the date in any given year when humanity use all of our natural resources and services in that particular year exceed the ability of the earth to regenerate in that year. So what happens? Since when that we humans use more than the earth's capacity? So actually humanity's footprint first exceeded global biocapacity in the early 1970s, so 50 years ago, and has done so every year since then. So by 2019, just before the pandemic, the annual overshoot has accrued into an ecological debt that exceeds 17 years of the Earth's total productivity. And this year's the Earth Overshoot Day was a shy months ago on July 29th, while we still have several months to go until the end of this year, 2021. So we are gobbling up the natural resources at an unsustainable rate, and we practically now live in our ecological debt of this year. And in the last 10 to 20 years, we have noticed more heat waves, storms, and other severe weather events. The increase in wildfires, drought, and tornadoes and hurricanes is directly related to our ocean rising, which is, in turn, directly related to the increase of global temperature. You must have heard about global warming. So higher temperatures result in faster evaporation of water. When there is more water vapor in the atmosphere, we experience more frequent, more torrential storms. The increase in global temperatures will be catastrophic to this beautiful green planet we call home. Remember, the Prophet said that Allah created this earth green and beautiful. But what's happening now, as we see on the news every day? This dramatic increase in rising global temperature is exactly why we need to make some serious changes now. And if you have children, grandchildren, or plan to start a family, the changes that you make right now can help improve the quality of life for future generations and hopefully in saving the planet, inshallah. And this year, Islamic New Year's 1443 Hijri was commemorated on August 9th. which is at the same time with the release of the report from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or we usually heard being called as IPCC, which sadly lays out in stark terms the disastrous environmental impact on the planet's natural systems and worsening extreme weather events around the world. What a coincidence, but there is no coincidence. We celebrated the New Year, the new Islamic New Year. At the same time, there is this IPCC report, which is very, very sad. The news was staggering. It is a code red for humanity. Corporations, governments, cultural and religious forces are not doing enough, and in many places are making things worse. While the Islamic New Year's honor the Prophet Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina when he fled persecution to establish the Muslim community, it is also considered as a time for prayer and reflection on the sacrifices that led to the beginning of our faith. Hijrah is understood not only a physical migration that took place more than 1400 years ago, it is also a constant process. It's a mentality, it's a philosophy, it's something we live by. Hijrah is something Muslims constantly do. Muslims want to avoid, stay away from the wrong things and do the right things. It's a state of mind. Thus, how could we as an ummah transform such wisdoms into practice by caring towards our current planet's devastated condition? Muslims around the world are united by a fundamental belief that all people, all living things, and the earth are sacred. Allah has created the universe in all its splendors, and our duty as human beings is to be the Khalifa, the stewards, to cultivate the greater good for all people and all of His creation. But as we consider the actual state of the world as Muslims, our hearts overflow with concern. Climate-induced floods, droughts, and wildfires are now happening more frequent, and it's always those who have done least to cause the problem who suffer the worst. Racial and ethnic minorities, the poor, the elderly, young children, and women. Those are some examples. There are significant demographic and geographical disparities as well. Here in the United States, it is well documented that the communities of color suffer disproportionately from climate change-induced heat waves and severe storms. Internationally, many of predominantly Muslim North African countries are among the most impacted parts of the world, despite having done very little to contribute to climate crisis. And in Islam, there's a clear call for action to protect the environment and to work against climate change. The Holy Quran calls us to recognize that Allah established the natural world in a life-sustaining balance, in Mizan, which we should both respect and protect. The Quran also recognizes that people are responsible for all forms of human wrongdoings, including that which affects the land, the sea, and the air. In effort to integrate these values into our own personal lives, more and more Muslims around the world are trying to change their own personal consumption habits and to walk more gently and to live more lightly on earth. Many of us, for example, are reducing the amount of water we use during our wudu, the ritual cleansing before we pray. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived in the desert. He recognized how valuable water was and taught us to use it sparingly. This example takes on new meaning for us today. Muslims around the world also have started approaching Ramadan with a more climate centric lens by ensuring they reduce waste. This is part of Green Ramadan campaign. And some Muslim activists are pushing for greater energy efficiency and the use of renewable energies in their masajid, along with the training of Islamic clerics about the importance of saving energy. The hope to see more green masjids all over the world. They also encourage Muslim pilgrims to make the Hajj pilgrimage to Makkah more sustainable through Green Hajj initiative. So while personal behavior change is vital, it is not enough to turn the tide. Governments, financial institutions, and corporations have massive power over the environment. And we are alarmed by the massive gap between what is required to limit catastrophic global temperature rise and actual climate change commitments by governments, financial groups, and multinational companies. And after decades of knowing how serious the climate crisis is, this gap between what is needed and what is happening is morally unbelievable, unacceptable. And this November of 2021, a major United Nations Climate Change Summit, or we call it COP26, will be hosted in Glasgow, Scotland. The summit has been hailed as the biggest climate moment since the Paris Agreement at COP21 in 2015. The historic treaty signed by 196 countries that agreed to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels, although preferably below 1.5 degrees. Right now, the planet is 1.1 degrees hotter than it was between 1850 and 1900. So the timing couldn't be more crucial. It was a stark warning what might happen if COP26 doesn't come through with serious commitments to radical action. COP26 also takes on a special significance as the fifth summit since the Paris Agreement, which according to the treaty means countries must come with their updated national determined contributions, or it's called NDC. This basically refers to the commitment a country makes to reduce its carbon emissions. Every 5 years, signatories of the Paris Agreement must put forward updated plans with the highest possible level of ambition, how much they want to reduce their carbon emissions of their country. Many global climate activists are calling for countries to meaningfully commit to the global environmental movement, such as Green New Deal that happens in the United States, in the UK, and also faiths for climate justice from the multi-faith communities, which hosts a Global Day of Action this year in October 17 and 18. So it is time to call upon our governments and financial institutions to take serious responsibilities and to end their support for new fossil fuel infrastructure and tropical deforestation, to commit to universal access to clean and affordable energy, to support policies creating green jobs and job trainings, placement, healthcare, and income maintenance for workers and communities affected by the transition to a clean energy economy, and to enact policies to support those forced to migrate due to climate impacts. And before I end my talk today, let me remind all of us again that our Islamic traditions tell us that polluting the planet and our communities is wrong. It is haram to pollute and destroy the planet. And we believe it is our duty as Muslims, as people of faith, to stand up when there is injustice, especially to the indigenous and frontline communities who bear the brunt of climate impacts. And here in the United States, we need to call upon President Biden because as a person of faith himself, we believe that he is with us and needs to be reminded that stopping fossil fuels and keeping his promise to indigenous and frontline communities is the right thing to do. President Biden should do the right thing, stop fossil fuels and keep his promise to the environmental justice community, as he stated during his presidential campaign. And as community of faith, we are frustrated with the lack of action from governments around the world. Talk is not enough. We need real actions. Thus, we can call again upon President Biden and world leaders everywhere in the world to stop fossil fuels infrastructure now and increase our climate ambition while transitioning towards clean and renewable energy-based development and economy and gain more barakah from Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the time for us to send our message, climate justice now, such as the kind of commitments and action that define us as an ummah, of what it means to make our hijrah represent adil, justice, and rahmah, compassion, to the planet and the people. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.